Hi everybody, welcome to Facebook Live for an Inspirational Monday. So I hope everyone's had an amazing and inspiring weekend. I just came back to Sydney and I originally spent about a week in Melbourne. I had a really fun time in Melbourne and I had a flight that was meant to come back on Thursday that turned around about halfway, so I got an extra day in Melbourne. I didn't have a chance to see as many people, and I really appreciate everyone that inboxes me every time I decide to go to Melbourne. And it's really amazing because when I lived in Melbourne, I'd have an opportunity to connect with so many of you because I've got so many friends and a fan base in Melbourne. Then once I moved to Sydney, it's amazing how the further away I've gotten from Melbourne, when I come back, I really get to see how much people appreciate me. So anybody I didn't get the chance to connect with in Melbourne, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me. I'm back every 6 weeks, so I look forward to connecting with you then. Other than that, Facebook, call me and inbox me because I really do love hanging out with you guys. So this is Inspirational Monday, and on Mondays I pick certain topics that I find very inspiring. I got asked about this topic today, so I'll let you guys know that you can share, like, comment, interact. This isn't just me talking, this is a chance for us to connect. And I want to answer your questions live as well. If I don't get a chance to answer them live, but I can see you while I'm talking, then that will give me an opportunity to answer them later. So know whether I answer them now or later, feel free to interact. And Rax, I challenge you to help bring on some more tears. So pardon me, I've got hay fever today, so you may hear some sniffles. But Rax is one of my clients who's done some absolutely amazing work. We've overcome certain challenges that he had, and he was trying to create power in terms of his life and relationships and connections and work. And he's one person that has been able to, in the last few months, really access true tears of appreciation, gratitude, and appreciation for so many areas of his life. So we've kind of got a running joke that he'll kind of be driving and just send me messages of other areas of his life that he's really grateful for when he has tears of gratitude and appreciation and sees the magnificence of the universe. So I accept your challenge, Rax, and bring it on, buddy. And to all my other clients that are joining, I love hanging out with you guys. I love having a bit of a laugh and connecting with you guys. And once again, you'll have to excuse me for my sniffles today, but I didn't want to miss out on an Inspirational Monday. Okay, so let's start off with today's topic, which is discussing and overcoming PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, I've been blessed to work with a large range of clients experiencing all forms of labels, from the diseases such as, I've just lost the names now, depression, anxiety, bipolar, post-traumatic stress disorder, and so forth. And having the opportunity to work with so many labels has allowed me to have a look beyond the labels, have a look beyond what most people would look at and say, well, you have X, Y, and Z, and then label somebody with something that actually has a lot more depth to it. So when it comes to post-traumatic stress disorder, let's start off by breaking apart the name. Post meaning after, traumatic meaning something that you're perceiving in your environment that has more drawbacks than benefits, pain than pleasure, disservice and service, pain than pleasure. This has to be at an extreme generally to be called a post-traumatic stress disorder. Just the same way as if you see something in the future and you're fearful of it, it's just known as a fear. But if that fear becomes extreme, it's usually labeled as an anxiety. So post-traumatic stress disorder is an exaggeration of that in the past. So we have the trauma and the stress, which is very similar to the trauma. That is when we are seeing, once again, something in our past that has more drawbacks and benefits, pain than pleasure, disservice and service, disease than ease, to us or someone else other than ourselves or both, and disorder, meaning it's not in order. So from the label that you saw then for post-traumatic stress disorder, it's labeling something that happens in the past and the reaction that we have in accordance to that, where we throw the order of the universe, which has balance, out of order. And if we take 10 or 12 people that went through the same experience, regardless of what it was, and I've even been blessed to work with clients that have gone into war and went through their post-traumatic stress disorders and dissolved the perception that the war was all bad, and show them how they're actually inspiring people now until they were grateful for that. And I can discuss that later. But once we have certain activities, events, or situations that have happened in the past, and I've got a comment here I'll quickly stop for, reaction in accordance to your perceptions. Yes, Stefan, very great way of putting that as well. So it is a reaction to what you perceived. And what you perceived is the way that you see and label an event or situation that happens outside of you. It's not the way that it is, it's the way that we're labeling it, and we're deleting, distorting, and generalizing information and taking it in. And the way that I can prove this, I was just going to go on to a point that's very relevant. If we have an event that occurs and I'm in a group of 10 people, and those 10 people may take that event in 10 different ways. So they actually take that in. One person may be extremely traumatized and have PTSD. Another person who won't be affected, and there'll be a majority in between. And I'll have these two extremes and a variety in between that. That means that there were 10 different perceptions on that event based on who was perceiving it and how they felt about it. It's not right or wrong, good or bad. It's just a person's perception on that specific event. And when that perception goes to an extreme, there are certain effects on human physiology and human psychology and human biology. We call this dis-ease. And if I break that into the two words, the body is not at ease, it's dis and ease. And then disorder, the body's not in order. So clearly PTSD is letting people know, and a sign and a symptom to make you aware of areas in your life where they're not in order. So it's wise to bring that order into balance. And the reality is, later on in space and time, quite often we do. So if you think about certain situations or events that have happened or occurred way earlier in your life, and at the time you couldn't see the blessings from the stressings and you thought this was all one-sided and negative, later on in life you quite often found a blessing in that and appreciated it. So what I like to say is, why wait years, why months, decades, or years when you can overcome situations in hours and get those blessings from the stressings and the learnings that allow you to overcome and use that as fuel for fire? But how do we bring order to the mind and the body? Because quite often when we're talking about something as PTSD, it's an extreme. So I'm going to give you some insights and things that some of my clients have done in order to truly assist them to overcome the challenges that they've been through. Now, I once worked with a client that had experienced his mother being stabbed by his father 5 times around the age of 5. And when that had occurred, it had completely thrown his whole life out. It wasn't something that he was expecting. And I worked with him and said, there are most certainly some negatives that have occurred within that event. But whenever the mind sees one side without the other, negative without a positive or a positive without a negative, that perception of the outside gets taken in by the central nervous system. And the central nervous system works in a ratio. And if we have a look at a ratio that's more positive than negative or negative than positive, that feedback then gets sent down to the autonomic nervous system, which regulates chemicals and hormones. That's why what we think, we feel. So if you're perceiving something to have extreme negatives within space and time, over past, present, or future, your body will create symptoms within your physiology and they'll store. So in other words, every single emotion that we experience has to be first perceived by the mind and then created within the body. And each one of these is like a cocktail because they're made out of chemicals. So if you went to a bar and you ordered different drinks or different cocktails like a sangria or a tequila or a Corona, they taste different, just like every emotion feels different because it's a different mixture of chemicals and hormones that are being released through the body. So in the case of this particular client, through only seeing more of one side than the other, his body was experiencing dis-ease and disorder, highly negative charges and emotions, and he felt trapped. So I said, well, you've held on to this for 40 years. Let's have a look at the other side to see what else has occurred in nature, what you've deleted, distorted, and generalized. So we can bring a balance to this and we can utilize aspects of what's occurred to allow this particular person to find what blessings also occurred within that time. Now, I have to admit, even when I first started applying the DeMartini method, a mind equilibrating tool with this client, it was an interesting challenge. But we both got to work, we dedicated ourselves, and what we found was quite a blessing. Within the dynamics of this person's mother and father, the mother and father had quite often been in confrontations with each other, where the father was seen as highly narcissistic, projecting his values onto the mother and constantly physically abusing her. And the mother was highly altruistic and scared to express herself. And she had been trapped in that dynamics, and as a 5-year-old, he had been watching that as he grew up, really feeling for his mum, but not feeling that he could express himself. Well, when that occurred, it actually ended up becoming a media sensation. And the mum started to express herself. She started to express her voice. She realized the amount of separation between her and her partner, and he got put in jail. They got shifted to another country, and when they went to that other country, she had a real reason and a drive to start managing her life. She went out, she actually started investing in property, she took all the areas that she wasn't managing, she looked after her beauty, she started changing the relationship dynamics, who she attracted, when, where, and just really empowered herself. This particular gentleman went from watching years of abuse with his mother and not feeling that he could really connect with her and feeling sorry for her to seeing her empower herself. And not only that, instead of watching that happen day in and day out and wondering, when is this going to freaking end? He had the opportunity to then go from there to moving in overseas with family and a big family cycle that really felt for him and wanted to care for him and connect with him. And for his whole teenage years, he never really felt like he wasn't loved. He always felt that there was somebody there and they really wanted to make sure that they felt protected. So he went from absolute stressing to absolute blessing in that perception in his mind. And then I asked him another question and said, if your father had not done that in that day, if that event had not occurred, what would be the drawback if your mum had not experienced what you're calling an extremely traumatic event? And this was an overseas call because I was doing an international consultation and it was beautiful. I mean, I even ended up with a set of tears in my eyes when he said, if that had not occurred, I'm worried that my mum would have had to go through the same thing for years and I would have had to watch it and I would have experienced absolute sadness and hurt and eventually ended up having some kind of confrontation with my father, or she would have got killed. So as we went through and we saw both sides of it, he finally let go of that and had tears of gratitude and appreciation. Realized how this has actually come together through the dynamics of his parents and what they both had to learn. That humbled his father, who he's now friends with, and it increased the growth for his mother. It allowed both of them to see where they were exaggerating and minimizing themselves and increase their power. And when we brought the blessings and the stressings together, we didn't ignore any sides. We had a look at this event in its totality. This particular client had an opportunity to say thank you for that aspect of his life and utilize that as an opportunity to grow and appreciate the people that had come in his life and what that had taught him. And he had a real appreciation for certain aspects of his life and sharing that with other people and letting them know how blessed they are to be in the position that they are. So that's one case, but I've worked with hundreds. And it doesn't have to be an extreme. I've worked with a lot of clients that have events, situations, and things in the past that they have trouble letting go of. Now, another reason sometimes that we have trouble letting go, and it may not be an extreme or labeled as a post-traumatic stress disorder, but it is a post-stress that creates disorder within the body. Holding on to negative emotions and associations. You see, right now as I'm talking to you, there may be certain things that a group of you will connect with and that things that others don't connect with, and it has to do with the way that you're seeing and perceiving the world. As we go through our daily lives, we have 5 senses that we're clearly aware of that organize our information and take in information. If something was to happen that you label more negative than positive, more drawback than benefit, more disservice than service, and it's an extreme, you'll store that information. So imagine visually, whatever I saw on the outside or on the inside of my mind, I'm going to store that. What I heard in terms of tonality or the way that something was said, or in the reference that it was said to, what it felt or what I was feeling. So all of these different aspects actually create like a landscape or an image in our minds. And later on, when things remind us of that specific event or situation that we label to be a negative event, that can trigger off something where we react to the same situation. That is why we can get into relationships or associations in work and repeat and pre-repeat the same cycles over and over again until we learn how to bring balance to that area. That's quite often when I work with clients and they say we attract the same partnerships and the same relationships and feel disempowered and like we're not expressing ourselves. And I remind them of situations where similar things occurred and then they, as a strategy, they're inverting inwardly or screaming and having irrational fights, but they're not figuring out how to overcome that. So that's having an effect on the body, that's having an effect on the organs and the autonomic nervous system and damaging the body. Whenever that occurs, it will occupy time and space in our mind, can't get it out of our heads, occupy time and space in the body, we feel it inside of our bodies as well. Naturally, we're not actually meant to hold on to these. We're meant to transition and move forward through life, learn how to evolve from challenge to challenge. So the body and the mind will hold on to stressful perceived situations from the past. It will make sure that they store psychologically and physiologically, and it will constantly bring them up until we actually dissolve and resolve them. Just today, I had the blessing of working with, and in fact, the last couple of days, some very empowering women that have taken on their relationship challenges, had to look and investigate it in specific partners who they perceived had more pain than pleasure, drawbacks and benefits, disservice and service, and also that they were highly infatuated with, and be able to work through them and change the way that they saw the past and change the way that they saw the future. I do this on a daily basis, utilizing the D. method, because it's the most powerful method I know for dissolving imbalanced emotions and revealing the magnificence of the universe. Funnily enough, Our minds are like hard drives, and everything that occupies time and space is like a virus. And the more things that we have that are creating post-traumatic stress disorders or past stresses, the more things that occupy time and space, and eventually we feel unauthentic, like we're not being ourselves. We feel scared of things around us because we have a lot of anchors to things that are popping up, and we feel that we can't move forward. But the more that we actually dissolve these perceived stressings, see the hidden blessings, and appreciate them and tick them off as being done, the more clarity, time, and certainty we have for things that inspire us, and the more we give ourselves permission to do what inspires us in life. When we do that, we inspire others through our stories, we inspire others through our actions, and we take the things of the past we had stress towards, and when others come to us with those perceived situations, we show them the light and bring them to higher levels of awareness so that they too can utilize their life. Whenever we reflect on the past, shames, hurts, guilts, emotional comparisons to the now, we lose the here and now. And people can lose 10, 20, 30 years or a whole lifetime thinking about things in the past and comparing them to now. When we get worried about the things in the past, sometimes we create anxieties and fears of the future. So we don't even get to be present and live in the here and now. And that ages us and creates symptoms and signs all over the body. That's why when you see someone that's highly stressed, generally they look like they've aged. But when we bring balance to the past and the future, and we appreciate both and turn the fuel into fire, we give ourselves permission to be present in the here and now. Our mind stores all of these, and the minute that we start to take the storage and clean that out, just like an apartment, it starts to look beautiful and we feel beautiful internally and out. So if you or somebody that you know has events, situations, people, traits, actions, whether it's yourself or others, whatever it is, that you have past baggage towards, I highly recommend utilizing the consultant like myself or a DMartini method facilitator, someone that specializes in dissolving emotions and guaranteeing you that you're able to do that, and then teaching you how to do the same thing so that you can let go of past stressings, turn them into blessings, see both sides much quicker in space and time, and appreciate the totality of your life. If it's already happened, then it's happened. Let's see how we can change the perception so that you can appreciate the whole of your life, be present here and now, and inspire others regardless of what's happened. And I'll leave you with this note. If you take some of the greatest leaders, if you take some of the people that have done the greatest things in this world, whether you want to look at the Muhammad Ali's, Tony Robbins, Dr. John DeMartini's, Stephen Curry's, a lot of people, Michael Jordan even, a lot of these people went through situations, circumstances, and events where they felt that they needed to take great challenges on. And due to the great challenges, they built great resources, and they expanded their minds beyond anything or anybody else and said, I do not want anybody else to go through what I went through, and dedicated their lives due to those events to going out and helping humanity. So sometimes the people with the worst perceived stressings are the ones that go out and give humanity the most inspiring blessings. And it wasn't what happened to them, but their perception of what happened to them that allowed them to transition forward. So I'm inviting you to do the same thing with your life and increase your appreciation, increase your enlightenment, and increase your ability to serve others. So I look forward to touching base with some of you. Whoever you feel could utilize this information, share that with them or get them in contact. I love referrals. It's an opportunity to connect with somebody else and share a loving and grateful message and assist them in their lives. So feel free to also pass anybody that you care about along my inbox or in reply to this. Have an inspiring Monday. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to our next Facebook Live. Ciao.